Well, good evening, everybody. I am Patrick Christys. I'm in for Mark Steyn this Monday evening. Coming up in the next hour, as attacks close to Kiev intensify, I'll be going to ground zero of this conflict to get the latest live from the epicentre with a Ukrainian MP who is refusing to leave the city. Hey, it's nice to see there are some people still left in this world who are willing to fight for their country, isn't it? Also, as NATO warns that chemical weapons could be used by Putin, I'll be asking what types of terror weapon are most likely to be used and exactly what their effect on the human body actually is. With Patrick Benham-Crosswell, he'll be joining me live. And COVID conveniently disappeared for a while, didn't it? But just like a nasty case of rising damp in a bathroom, it's back yet again. The Health Secretary certainly thinks so, at least. Frankly, I don't care anymore, do you? And that's what I want to ask you. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Do you still care about COVID? Personally, I have stopped. But anyway, there we go. And remember, of course, your involvement in this is crucial. As I've said, get in touch with me, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or, of course, tweet us @gbnews. Don't be shy. But before anything else, let's get the latest headlines right now with our very own Tamsin.
Patrick, thank you. Good evening from the GB newsroom. EU member states have approved a fourth round of sanctions against Russian oligarchs and entities. The move comes as Kiev and Ukraine's second largest city, Kharkiv, come under continued bombardment. The UN has confirmed more than 600 civilians, including 46 children, have been killed during the conflict. Ukrainian Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal is now urging human rights body, the Council of Europe, to expel Russia.
We demand that a decision is approved to immediately oust Russia from the Council of Europe. The ones who definitely support this non-provoked and unjustified aggression cannot stay in the single European family where human life is the highest value.
Meanwhile, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky released a statement saying Russia's been planning the invasion for some time.
We have no right to relax. The Russian state has been preparing for this war for tens of years. They have built up huge military resources for the sake of evil, in order to uproot the neighbours, in order to destroy Ukraine, Europe as we know it and value.
The United Nations is allocating a further £30 million for humanitarian assistance in Ukraine. Secretary-General Antonio Guterres also warned an escalation in the war poses a global threat.
Raising the alert of Russian nuclear forces is a bone-chilling development. The prospect of nuclear conflict, once unthinkable, is now back within the realm of possibility.
The government says there'll be no limit on the number of Ukrainians allowed to stay in the UK. The new Homes for Ukraine initiative opens the door to refugees for up to 3 years, giving them full access to benefits, healthcare and employment. Labour's calling it a DIY asylum scheme, but Levelling Up Secretary Michael Gove told MPs the UK has a long history of helping those in need.
The British people have already opened their hearts in so many ways, and are hopeful that many will also be ready to open their homes and to help those fleeing persecution find peace, healing and the prospect of a brighter future.
A video's emerged appearing to show the owner of Chelsea Football Club, Roman Abramovich, at an Israeli airport. It's after the Russian was sanctioned by the British government for his links to President Putin. Mr. Abramovich was apparently spotted in Tel Aviv, despite being issued with a travel ban. TV, online and DAB Plus radio, this is GB News. Now let's get straight back to Patrick.
Good evening, everyone. Patrick Christys here, in for Mark Steyn. Let's get stuck straight in, shall we? The virtue signalling, about Ukraine's last night's BAFTAs made me want to be sick. This room full of overprivileged, undereducated charlatans spent the last few years gratuitously making cheap jokes at the expense of Donald Trump. They openly wanted Biden. They called for it. Some of them actually campaigned for it. And now, here they are, waving the Ukrainian flag, lamenting the humanitarian crisis, showing their solidarity with a nation that would never have been invaded if Orange Man Bad had still been in power. Most of them jumped on board the eco-warrior Environmental Express as well. Basically, they were blindly led along by a Swedish teenager who, by definition, hardly ever attended school, and helped to influence a Western green agenda that handed so much power to Vladimir Putin that he felt emboldened enough to roll the tanks in. But they didn't think of that, did they? Because they were too busy virtue signalling. They're now all saying that what a great man Volodymyr Zelensky is. Yes, a strong man who cares about his national sovereignty and borders and is prepared to defend them. Apparently this lot care about borders, just not their own. They love a strong leader who cares about his country, unless, of course, he happens to be called Trump. They're all just jumping on the bandwagon. They make the mistake of thinking that because we pay money to watch them perform at the cinema, that their views on international relations and geopolitics count for something. We all sit there with bated breath, waiting for the sage wisdom to cascade out of their mouths like a Niagara Falls of horse manure. You'd find more self-worth by scraping the U-bend of a public toilet at Euston Station than you would in the entire auditorium of that BAFTA reception. They're lecturing us all about the humanitarian crisis. Well, I bet that if you surveyed the property portfolio of the Hollywood superstars in that crowd, you'd be able to find enough spare rooms for 200,000 refugees, let alone the 100,000 that Britain is asking ordinary men and women to take in at their own cost. This lot, they don't care about Ukraine or its people. This is just the latest virtue signalling bandwagon that they're all jumping on. It was Me Too for a while, wasn't it? Despite the fact that most of them had Harvey Weinstein on speed dial. Despite the fact this bunch of self-proclaimed feminists are now trying to get J.K. Rowling cancelled for standing up for women's rights. Then it was the environment. Have you or I ever been on a private jet, or indeed anywhere near one? Probably not. They call that a taxi service. William and Kate copped it a couple of years ago because this bunch of bloated multimillionaire actors decided that our royal family were the unjustifiably entitled ones. They just pick an issue and run with it, this lot, don't they? Their words mean nothing. Their level of self-importance is staggering. Benedict Cumberbatch saw fit to announce his engagement in the Times, for goodness sake, as if everybody needed to know. I imagine he'll be staggered to learn that nobody cared about that either. Just collect your award and jog on. That expensive bottle of Petrus you ordered isn't going to drink itself, mate. I imagine you'll allow all the Ukrainian refugees you're taking into one of your many homes unfettered access to your wine cellar, will you? No. All this worthiness and grandstanding is just a projection of their own personal insecurity and uncomfortableness relating to their own extreme privilege. For a bunch of very successful actors, they haven't half played a tremendously bad role when it comes to the current mess the world finds itself in. Yes, now I want to get the view right from the ground floor of this Ukraine crisis, and there's nobody better to talk to than Ukrainian MP Inna Sovsun, who's in Kiev and is actually refusing to leave, as I understand it. Inna, thank you very much. Now, you're encircled. There's no no-fly zone at all. Kiev, I believe, is about to be the scene of possibly the biggest battle Europe has seen since World War II. And I want to know, how does that feel for you?
Well, thanks for asking. I wouldn't say we are encircled. Encircling a 4 million people city is actually extremely difficult, particularly given that we have a river in the middle. So Russians are trying to get closer to the city. They are getting closer. Just about 20, 30 minutes ago, we did hear some shootings close nearby, which is becoming the norm. We did have another siren, and it just went off just literally 5 minutes ago. So this is part of everyday life here in Kiev right now. We do feel threatened, of course. We do know that the Russians are trying to get closer. But we also know that the Ukrainian army is fighting back very harsh. We do know that the Russians' attempt to get to the city from the northeast have actually been pushed back by the Ukrainian army. And that has given us a great hope. There are, however, major battles in the northwest. So that is actually, well, terrifying. And of course, this morning, we all woke up to the news that one of the missiles hit one of the buildings in Obolon district in northern Kyiv. That's actually the district where I have been living for, well, over 14 years now. I wasn't home that night. I was staying somewhere else. But that was literally very close to home. And this, what you are seeing now on the video, is a Ukrainian air defense system working, and it hit the missile, but the missile hit on the city. So that is kind of getting closer. It's really getting closer.
That's all fine. I want to know how you feel about something. When Volodymyr Zelensky gave an address to our parliament here, I believe he's the first foreign leader to actually ever address our House of Commons, and we all gave him a standing ovation. But actually, I felt very uncomfortable about that, because from where I'm sitting, it looks as though we're willing to let him die. We are not willing to give him what he wants. A no-fly zone, we're not willing to put boots on the ground. OK, I know he's not necessarily asked for that directly, but we're not really willing to actually properly stand up for him. And there feels like, and I'm very sorry to say this, it's just a feeling, it feels as though there's a tragic inevitability about what's going to happen in Ukraine. And ultimately, do you think that when we clap for someone like that in Parliament, it means nothing if we don't actually fight for your country in the way that your brave brothers and sisters are doing?
Well, I do have to tell you this. It does feel to a very big extent like a betrayal by the West of our country. That is the feeling in the Parliament, I can tell you for sure, among my fellow MPs, and that is the feeling among the people. I'm talking to many, many people all the time, and they're all saying, like, Inna, you're talking to so many international journalists, you're talking to so many people abroad. Why don't they understand that the only way to prevent World War III right now is actually to stop it here in Ukraine? Because whenever I hear this argument that if we get engaged, we shall provoke World War III, I believe that is a huge misunderstanding of Putin and his motive and his understanding of reality. Whenever Putin hears, we don't want to escalate, for him that says, oh, you can go further. That is why he wasn't punished for Crimea enough, and now he invaded the whole of Ukraine. OK,
I do want to ask you something, though. Are you pro-Europe? Are you, as an MP in Ukraine, are you pro-Ukraine during the European Union?
Yes, I'm representing the party which has probably been one of the most pro-European party.
OK.
And that is why for us, that is probably the biggest.
Do you feel as though that's been a provocation to Putin?
I wouldn't know how to say, but I do feel that this is like the behavior of the West right now does feel like a betrayal of our interest. Yes.
I do understand that, and look, I think it's pretty obvious which side I'm on in this particular fight, but I do want to get this from you yourself. Do you feel as though Ukraine's push towards the European Union and the potential push towards NATO has, in a way, caused this?
No, because, well, probably from the United Kingdom, the history of complicated relations between Ukraine and Russia are not that obvious, but Russia has been trying to colonize Ukraine for centuries. Since the 17th century, there was this history of Russia, which was built on this narrative that if we control Ukraine, we are the empire. That was the narrative for centuries by Russia. And then they do make up different reasons, like why we want to get Ukraine closer. They're always different. Like in the Soviet times, there was one reason. Then they made this big famine where 10 million people died in Ukraine. Then they were so they're always trying to get control over Ukraine. That is like a huge narrative psychosis of Russia over history. So Russia did not attack Ukraine because of Ukraine was getting closer to Europe or NATO. I will remind you that Russia attacked Ukraine in 2014 when we were not even talking about NATO. There was no talk about that. It attacked Ukraine just because it was feeling that it is moving civilizationally, not institutionally, but civilizationally in a different direction than Russia was. And that is the only reason.
OK. Vladimir Putin, of course, has, said that there are going to be false flag operations, for example. He even, I think, absolutely disgracefully, given the fact that that now infamous picture of the pregnant lady at the Mariupol maternity ward, according to reports, now has sadly passed away along with her baby. The embassy in this country said that she was some kind of crisis actor, and they use a lot of disgraceful rhetoric. But how does it make you feel when your country is accused of false flag events or things like that? And I have to be honest with you, quite a few people in this country believe that.
Well, how can I react to that? I'm doing my best to tell the truth. I do understand I'm biased, but I can tell you 100% that everything that I'm telling to the international media, everything I'm telling you right now, is absolutely based on the information that I can confirm. So the Russian propaganda machine has been functioning for years. It's unfortunate that only now some of the media outlets that were working as Russia propaganda machine for the abroad, they only now have been suspended or cancelled in one way or another, like on YouTube or something. But they have been functioning for years, and we are seeing the result of that, I believe, now. And also, of course, the Russian are also supporting some marginal political parties in different countries. That, of course, also does have an impact.
So are ordinary men and women now taking up arms? I interviewed one of your, I suppose, comrades would be a good word for it, fellow MPs, earlier today. And when I interviewed him, we went live to Kiev and a bomb had just gone off, right? A missile had just landed not too far behind him and he was in extreme danger. And we're very grateful for the fact that he still held his camera up and showed us the scene. But that bomb went off next to a residential area and it, I believe, hit anyway a bus, which one would imagine had members of the public on it. Are ordinary members of the public now totally convinced they are going to stand up and fight and, frankly, turn Kiev into Putin's Stalingrad?
First of all, that bomb that you must have heard on the television live, it actually killed one person. That was the missile that was hit by the air defense system.
You were right there on the scene.
Yeah. And, as for the ordinary people, I will tell you this. Yesterday or the day before yesterday, I was asked by a friend of mine who said, Inna, you are a member of parliament, you have many connections. Can you make sure that my brother gets into the territorial defense or into the military? Because they're overstuffed. They don't take any more people because they don't know how, what sort of job to give them right now in Kiev. That is for the world, for the audience to understand the level of commitment of people. People are not running away. Of course, people are taking care of their kids, of their, disabled relatives, elderly relatives. That's one story. But people in general in Kiev are willing to fight. They have built immense fortifications around the city. They're ready to get into a fight. No one is ready to give up, that's for sure.
One of the issues in this country, and I'm very grateful to get your take on this, is regarding Ukrainian refugees. Now, this government has offered people £350 a month to take a refugee into their own homes, and yet we do spend about £6,000 a month per refugee who's come from the Middle East over the Channel, housing and feeding them. Do you feel as though, for some reason, our government sees you as lesser than some other refugees?
Well, you know what? I think that the best way to spend money on dealing with the refugee crisis is helping us establish a no-fly zone. That's as simple as that. So I'm just asking not to switch attention to the issue of refugees, as I'm seeing often is being done, because yes, 3 million people left Ukraine, but 30 million are still in the country. And they're under constant danger. So yes, we are grateful for any support that is being given to the Ukrainian refugees. We do hope they're being treated equally and then, to an extent possible by the host country. But I know for sure that the absolute majority of them are willing to come back. And if we have the no-fly zone established one way or another, they will come back.
Just on that, sorry, because we're a little bit pressed for time. I really appreciate all your honesty and answering literally everything directly that I've asked you so far. I really appreciate that. In fact, I wish more of our MPs had your attitude, actually. But on this no-fly zone, would it not result in World War III? Because Putin wouldn't stop. We'd end up shooting down Russian planes. It would play into China's hands. It would play into various Middle Eastern countries' hands. And actually, it would cause World War III, wouldn't it? We can't have a no-fly zone, can we?
Well, that is a popular argument. But, first of all, Ukraine was promised protection by the United Kingdom in 1994 when we were giving up our nuclear weapon. So promises made need to be promises kept. That's one thing. But in terms of the World War III, we are seeing now that this big, famous Russian army that was believed to be so strong and undefeatable is actually very easily defeatable. We are defeating, we are, fighting very equally with them right now. So fighting Russian army is not that scary. I'm sure they already understand that, and they will not try to go into World War III. They cannot fight against us. They cannot win against Ukrainian army. They will know for sure they will not be able to win against the NATO army.
I'm sure, look, I admire everything that you've said. I admire your courage as well, completely. It's just a difficult situation. Of course it is if China get involved, if other countries get involved, and that, by definition, then is a world war. And Russia isn't so isolated. But good luck to you. Let's keep talking, and I wish you all the very best. MP Inna Sovsun there, who is in Kiev and is refusing to leave. Thank you very much. And hey, you know what, ladies and gentlemen, whether or not you agree with everything she said there, whether or not you thought she was right in everything she said there, can you imagine a lot of our MPs coming and looking straight down the barrel and being as honest as that? Well, there you go. Anyway, right. We are going to go to your views when we come back, so get them coming in. Thank you very much. GBViews at gbnews.uk. Lots to get stuck into here. I did ask you right at the start of the show whether or not you're over COVID, frankly, whether or not you've stopped caring. We've had loads of emails in on that, so we're going to go to them. Get stuck in. Don't be shy. I'll be back in a tick.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Mark Steyn Show with me, Patrick Christys. Yes, you are right. I am not indeed Mark Steyn. Anyway, let's get some of your reactions, OK? Loads of them have been coming in. John's been in touch. Thank you, John. He said, who do the Hollywood elite think they're fooling? All they care about is the next call from their agents. Yes, exactly. And for a while, one of those agents was Harvey Weinstein, wasn't it? But there we go. This is in reaction to my monologue earlier on, which is where I spoke about the fact that, frankly, all this virtue signalling tosh from this kind of Hollywood kind of virtue signalling nutters is absolutely bang out of order. They were all calling for Orange Man Bad Donald Trump to go. They're all calling for Greta Thunberg to get her way. Well, what's happened? They've ended up with sleepy Joe Biden and actually an environmental policy that has played right into Putin's hands. They have got a lot to answer for when it comes to the current situation that we're in. And as far as I'm concerned, if you win a BAFTA, you should just take your award, jog on and shut up. Anyway, moving on. Veronica has been on the emails as well. Your monologue puts into words the absolute despair we feel when being lectured by the lovies. Exactly. I mean, who does Hugh Grant think he is? Ukrainian men, women and children have more courage and worth in their little fingers than these preening peacocks, good, yes, absolutely, will ever imagine. And it's so true, isn't it? It's so true. At the end of the day, this lot haven't spent a lot of time in school, have they? This lot haven't really got any grip on the real world, you know? They're all sat there drinking their Petrus, drinking their Chateauneuf de Pape, taking their private jets to environmentalist meetings, and yet they make the crucial mistake, don't they? They think just because they've had a box office hit, right, that people are there waiting on bated breath for their sage wisdom about the latest current affairs. No one cares, Benedict Cumberbatch. No one cares. Chester on email says, this would not be happening in Ukraine if Donald Trump was in power. And I have to agree with you. It wouldn't have done. And actually now a lot of people are starting to wake up to this. Trevor Noah, I believe, he's a very prominent American commentator, comedian, host, isn't he? And certainly much more successful than I am. There's probably a reason for that. But he's even said, look, you know, they wouldn't be ignoring Trump's calls, would they? Trump had an air of unpredictability about him that Joe Biden simply doesn't. The only thing unpredictable about Joe Biden, frankly, is whether or not he's going to remember which day of the week it is. We're looking at a man here who mistook Ukraine for Iran, to say the very least, who also, some would argue, opened Ukraine's borders by admitting, before Putin had even fired a shot, that he would be willing to tolerate a, quote, minor incursion. I don't know who's in charge of America these days, but it's definitely not Joe Biden. Gillian's been in touch via email. Hi, Patrick. Well said. This would not be happening in Ukraine if Donald Trump was in power. Very similar theme to our previous guest there. I think I've said everything that we have to say on that. But keep these views coming in. I also did ask you, didn't I, whether or not you've stopped caring about COVID. It's emerged, hasn't it, ladies and gentlemen, that our PCR test, shock horror, proved to be a little bit faulty, to say the least. Now, we went into lockdown as a result of some of our mass testing. We were told we were the sick man of Europe as a result of our mass testing. You add that to all the flawed data we had before that as well. And apparently now we've got a new variant. I mean, it's about time, hasn't it? It's been about 5 minutes since the last one. Are you over COVID? Do you care about it? GBViews at gbnews.uk will be focusing in on that later in the show. Loads of people getting in touch already with that, and I want to stick with it, but we're just going to move away for now. As Russia takes control of key southern cities of Mariupol and Kherson, its soldiers edge even closer to Ukraine's third most popular city, Odessa. Now, from there, Ukrainian journalist Sergei Panashuk joins us live from the scene. Sergei, thank you very, very much for joining us. Just tell me about what the exact situation is on the ground right now. We're only seeing one side of this conflict on Twitter. We're only seeing one side of this conflict in a lot of our media. Are things as bad in Odessa as they sound?
Well, actually, things in Odessa are much more better than in other cities comparing to Kherson or even Mykolaiv. I spent 2 nights in Mykolaiv, and it was badly shelled on Saturday and especially on Sunday. And during my stay there, 9 civilians were dead, and 3 of them were just killed by Russian shellings near the supermarket in the morning. So people just went to buy some food, and they got killed. This is not.
Have you seen that? Then? Have you seen that? You've seen that with your own eyes.
I saw the bodies. I saw the bodies, and I saw the pools of blood. This is not something you can make up. This is not something that Russian television, Russian government says that it's not happening here. They are not killing civilians. It's real. It's a cruel reality. They are killing civilians. They're just shooting without any reason, without any concern. Also, 19 people were injured because of the window pane. Windows got broken, and they were injured by the glass shards. A lot of buildings were damaged, and a lot of buildings are now out of heating in Mykolaiv. So Mykolaiv starting to have it bad. But in Odessa, the situation is relatively calm comparing to other cities. And what I can confirm, which was what the deputy was saying in Kiev, that Ukrainians are ready to fight. Everyone. There are no single person here right now who supports Putin.
I'm sure they are. I'm sure they are ready to fight, and you certainly look as though you are ready to fight, and there's no doubt about that. And look, I've got to be very honest with you, and I hope you don't take this the wrong way. I mean this with the best of intentions. Every time I interview, which is almost every day, someone such as yourself in Ukraine, I am filled with dread that this will be the last time that I talk to you. How do you feel? Do you wake up every single day expecting the worst?
No, Odessa is one of the cities which is famous with its humor, and I'm saying that we are playing Russian roulette, like a new style Russian roulette. That means that you don't know if you're gonna wake up or not.
Okay.
This is the Russian roulette for us. Yeah, and this is what you see. It's a cluster. This is part of a cluster bomb, which was in Mykolaiv. Also, this is a damaged car in Mykolaiv, a burned car. This is all in a residential building, residential area. This is the crater from the explosion.
Just for those of us, just for those of our radio listeners who obviously can't see what you've shown there, I mean, it's relatively straightforward. I think you did a good job of explaining it. Essentially, it's collateral damage from bomb blasts throughout that city. Is there a fear that if the Russian forces do manage to breach the city, that they will indiscriminately kill people, that they will use very, very bad tactics? We've heard of things in the past, and you know, you hope these won't happen, but things like rape and stuff like this. are you very, very, very concerned about not just the fact that your city might be overrun, but the behaviour of the Russians if they overrun it?
We can't be sure what they will do. As they already showed in Melitopol and other cities, they are kidnapping the authorities, which are not wanted to cooperate with them. So they're probably gonna be repressions against the pro-Ukrainian people, and as long as it's at least 90%. It would be madness. It would be chaos and.
No, of course. And just describe to me, if you can, your personal situation right now. So, are you at home? Is that where we are? And are you armed? Are you staying there? Are you going out and about every day? Just tell our viewers and our listeners and our online viewers as well what you're personally doing on a day-to-day basis.
I'm wearing this vest because just to illustrate that this is actually my working outfit.
Right.
When I work, I'm wearing vest.
And why is
this is just to illustrate. I'm in a safe place right now in the hotel. So I'm just wearing this to illustrate how journalists work here, and it's weighs quite a lot. It's about 20 kilos, and you need to wear it just for the safety reasons. I'm working with the different foreign journalist TV crews. I'm working with them to let the world know what is going on here. The situation in Odessa is under control, under full control of Ukrainian military and territorial defense. There's a lot of people here. The city is safe at the moment, but there is a possibility that they are trying to land their Marines somewhere near. But there are plans. Everybody knows. The satellite images and everything, so it would be extremely hard for Russians to do something meaningful in Odessa unless they are going to bomb it down.
Okay. Sergei, thank you very much. Ukrainian journalist Sergei Panashuk there, joining us live from Odessa. Sergei, good luck to you, my friend. Thank you very much. Now, well, the spirits of those in Odessa, of course, and the rest of Ukraine hangs in the shadow of warnings that the darkest days of the conflict are indeed yet to come. Russia has accused the US of funding bio and chemical weapons labs across Ukraine, and although these claims have been widely dismissed, many think this is an attempt to build a false narrative and pretext to use chemical weapons themselves. And joining me now, right here in the studio actually, to discuss this, is former army officer and defence writer Patrick, my namesake, good name, cracking name, Patrick Benham-Crosswell. Thank you very, very much, Patrick. Now look, let's start with the basics at the start. Have they got chemical weapons in Ukraine? Have the Ukrainians been building chemical weapons funded by the US?
As far as I know, no. But then if they had, no one would have told me anyway.
Well, no.
I mean, the reality of the chemical warfare thing is there was a chemical weapons convention signed by all bar 4 countries in the world, which were, from memory, Egypt, Israel, North Korea, and one of the Sudans. And everyone said they hadn't got them. That had verification. The Russians actually were verified to have no chemical weapons in 2016, which, of course, was the year before they then used some in Salisbury. So.
Now, brings me on neatly. It's almost like we planned it. It brings me on neatly to my next point, which is that the Russians have been complicit in using chemical weapons, as you've said there, in Salisbury. Also, obviously, they had quite a lot of practice in Syria, as far as I'm aware. Does Vladimir Putin care about using chemical weapons against civilians of Ukraine, do you think? And if he doesn't, how likely is it that he will?
It's a good question. I'm not sure I can answer directly for what Mr. Putin cares about. I mean, I'd observed that he set off on a wall that he thought he could win in a matter of days, and he's now in a hole with no option but to keep on digging. I mean, if he's been making chemical weapons, they fall down broadly into 2 types. There's persistent ones and non-persistent ones.
Talk me through them, then.
The persistent ones you put on a place where you don't want your enemy to go or to make his life difficult. Classically, you dump them on an airfield, and for 4 days they're faffing around wearing gas masks and having to do everything really slowly.
Right.
Non-persistent ones, typically, or classically from the Cold War days, would last for half an hour to maybe 4 hours, and you dump them on somewhere where you want to attack. So they all have to put their gas masks on or die. And then if you get the timing right, you turn up, the chemical's gone away, they're all tired or dead or whatever, and you kill them. Those then split down into a variety of sorts, of which the most common and the most talked about are nerve agents. They're very unpleasant things. They're very lethal. They will kill you if you inhale them. Literally a drop the size of a pinhead, as the Skippers find out, it is enough to make you very, very ill. And indeed, you will usually die in minutes to hours.
Talk me through this now, because this is really what I wanted to dig down in. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this might seem a little bit morbid. It might seem a little bit, I don't know, gratuitous. I don't think it is. If there is a realistic possibility that Vladimir Putin is going to use chemical weapons, and it appears that there at least might be, then I think it's important for us to think about where our red lines are as a nation, as a society, as NATO. And I want you to explain to me, if that's OK, Patrick, the impact on the human body of some of these chemical weapons. It's not the persistent ones that you've said there, some of those more direct ones. What do they, just outline for me the exact types maybe and exactly what they do to you?
OK, this is a little ghoulish, and they all kill you eventually. So, you know, it's a little about how many angels can dance on the head of a pin. There are blood agents, typically hydrogen cyanide. They choke you. And that, of course, is an industrial available chemical, so you can actually have it without it appearing as a chemical weapon. Most relevant thing about that is it used to be the way that Americans kill people in gas chambers until it was found to be an unreasonable, unusual torture. There are choking agents. These are the First World War ones, mustard gases, which blister you on the outside. They may not kill you. They might blind you if you've got a big lungful. You might then actually drown in your own fluids. And there are the nerve agents, which simply attack your central nervous system. There's a whole range of systems that start with pinpoint pupils and armour headache, and ultimately end up in a range of increasingly bad symptoms, followed by your body going into spasm and dying. What can you do about it? Well, back in the day, most armies soldiers were equipped and trained to fight in chemical warfare conditions. And I can't emphasise enough, you can learn to use a new weapon or a new rifle or a new anti-tank weapon relatively quickly. The whole surviving in a hostile chemical environment is possible, but it takes practice and practice and practice. And of course, you've got to have the kit. My understanding of the Ukrainian army is, like everyone else, they had the kit, they were trained for it back in the Cold War days, and it was a legacy threat and legacy capability. And then as everyone signed up for the banning of chemical weapons, it disappeared down the training priorities. That, of course, cuts both ways, because that cuts for the Russians as well. Let's face it, the magnificent army has turned out to be not that well maintained. While you should be safe inside a tank if all the filters and everything else and all the seals are made, it might be that their maintenance has been less than perfect, and so it could be a bit of an own goal. What do you actually get as a battlefield benefit? Well, yes.
From using chemical weapons?
By using a chemical weapon as the aggressor, you get the same effect as an artillery barrage, but for longer, perhaps, and more specifically. But after that, all you've really done is neutralised the enemy, killed a few people. You've still got to go and invade the ground. If you want to go in to invade the ground, you want to know that your own people aren't going to get killed by the thing that you send over a way ago. And of course, things like wind make it very difficult. So in terms of a tactical advantage or a tactical benefit, I don't really see that there is much of one.
Unless he's willing to play a longer game in that sense, unless he's willing to just eviscerate a group of people and then wait it out and then go in later.
Well, indeed. But where you do get an advantage, and I mean, many people, many talking heads like me have said, Mr. Putin hasn't got enough men in combat to win this war and hold down Ukraine. But if you're into siege warfare, then you're into a game of psychological warfare, terrorising people. Would Ukrainians be more terrorised by yet another artillery barrage? Well, they've done that. Or a gas attack? Well, it's another thing. The flip side of that is that puts, Putin already world pariah, or double world pariah. What does that look like, and what does that mean?
Well, I wonder, I'd like your input on this really just finally, which is that I wonder whether or not Putin is trying to goad the West into more action, which would act as a trigger for the likes of China getting involved on his side. And then, surely, he wouldn't have a problem winning, and he wouldn't have a problem winning on a larger scale if he wanted to. Maybe I'm wrong.
I think China's playing a very long game. You know, there's a long history of conflict between China and Russia over this river and the resources and this, that and the other. And China's been very much on the sidelines on this. I suspect that they're currently delighted that Mr. Putin has invaded Ukraine, ecstatic that the Ukrainians are fighting so well and effectively destroying Mr. Putin's army for them for nothing. But I mean, this is clearly entire speculation.
Exactly, but it's fair enough there.
I can't see that China would want to undergo the sort of sanctions that have basically just destroyed the Russian economy to a greater or lesser extent. When if they sit back, promise everything, deliver nothing, they can play both sides against the middle and come out on top.
You don't think...
Historically, they've been quite good at it.
Well, they have, actually. They've been rather good at it, actually, and we've almost let them, to be fair. Just so I know I said finally, I lied to you. I'm saying very finally now, and I mean it this time, which is that do you think that China will get involved and back Russia if we give them an excuse to something like a no-fly zone that could end up in shooting down a Russian jet? You don't think that China is sitting there waiting to get involved on Russia's side, by the sounds of it?
I think perhaps China sees its role as them being able to come in as the great mediator. I mean, what's China going to bring to the party? Well, you can deliver some weapons, lots of stuff, but why would it want to move weapons west when all its eyes have always been on Taiwan? You know, I'm like you, I'm speculating, but it doesn't make any sense to me. They would surely be in a much better position coming and saying, OK, children, stop this now. We will guarantee the security of everyone. And then
probably be quite good PR for China as well after the last couple of years, to be fair, to be able to come in and be the great mediator after everything that's gone on. I could literally talk to you all day, and please, please, please make sure that we do this again very soon, actually. Thank you so much for coming into the studio. Great to have such sage wisdom on this show. Certainly anyone who listens to me on a daily basis will know that that's a rarity. Patrick Benning-Croswell joining us there. Thank you very, very much indeed. Now, still to come. Are we inching towards a COVID comeback? I certainly hope not, and I'm very, very sceptical given the fact that it seemed to disappear for a while. But I'll be getting to the bottom of that one next. I'll see you in 2.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
Right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Coming up on Dan Wootton Tonight, we'll speak to more courageous Ukrainians fighting for their lives in the middle of a war zone, including the MasterChef winner who's turned his restaurant into a bomb shelter. was sacrificing education the most egregious mistake of the pandemic, Israeli vaccine chief Cyril Cohen is next to give evidence in the lockdown inquiry as he reveals his pandemic regrets. And I'll break down the day's headlines with my superstar panel. The Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, senior reporter at the newspaper Benjamin Butterworth, and social commentator Esther Kraku. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
Welcome back, everybody. We're nearly at the end of the show. We've got another 15 minutes left. It has flown by. Now, it was only around 2 weeks ago that we were told that COVID was over. But today, there's been a slight change in tone from our health secretary, hasn't there? Classic, it's about time. Sajid Javid is now telling us to brace ourselves for a surge in COVID infections after scrapping the rules, but says the UK is still in a good position. Right, well, I'm joined now by the former Brexit Party MEP, Ben Habib. Ben, thank you very much. It's the big COVID con on.
COVID con on. Well, I mean, you know, isn't it funny how COVID has taken a back seat to Ukraine? And frankly, I think it's right. You know, Omicron, as I said before Christmas, funny enough, on GB News, Omicron, I think, was the end of COVID. It's a fastly transmitting, it's a rapidly transmitting virus, and it's not very virulent. And frankly, you know, measuring the number of infections now at this stage of the pandemic is not the point. What we need to be measuring, as indeed we should have been measuring for a long, long time, was number of hospitalizations and number of deaths coming directly as a result of COVID. And, you know, frankly, those are right down. So the number of infections are academic as far as I'm concerned.
Do you think people will stop caring?
Yeah, people absolutely have stopped caring. I've just flown back from Belfast this afternoon, and everyone in the airport was without their masks until they were forced to put them on by British Airways in order to board the aeroplane, which was the only point at which they were required to wear them. So people wore them immediately on the plane. As soon as they came off the plane, it was stripped off and people walked through the terminal. And, you know, I did the same, frankly.
Why do you think we're still being told about this? Do you think it's just a case of necessity as far as the government is concerned, because the likes of your Beth Rigby's will stand up and shout about lockdowns unless they do? Or do you think actually there's some element of fear-mongering going on? And if it's the latter, why?
Well, I'm not sure it's the latter. I don't think there's fear-mongering for the sake of fear-mongering. But I think the government is travelling in fear itself of getting it wrong, in fear of making a misstep and then being held accountable for not having been cautious enough, early enough, and living perhaps under the shadow of some of their earlier bad decisions back in 2020. But, you know, the reality is, at some point, as the Prime Minister so correctly said, I don't agree with a lot of what the Prime Minister says, but he so correctly said we've got at some point to start living with this virus. And with Omicron being so prevalent, with Omicron being so much less virulent, this is surely the time to do it. You know, all of us have become sort of semi-armchair experts in epidemiology, but we do know, I think most of us, that actually viruses now, you know, they mutate to become less aggressive and faster spreading. And from what I've been reading, you know, it's actually less damaging, less virulent, if you like, than the flu now. And, you know, that's how we need to treat it.
I'm very angry. I'm very angry about a few things. I'm very angry about the completely flawed data that thrust us into not one but two lockdowns. I'm very angry about the approach that the likes of Chris Whitty took to our daily press briefings. I'm very angry about the predictions that were completely wrong. I'm very angry about the way that we incorrectly recorded our amount of COVID deaths and presented that as fact. I'm very angry about the way that we put a lot of kind of kudos, really, in our PCR tests, and then the news is that they prove to be relatively faulty. Are you angry?
I've been a COVID lockdown.
I want an apology. Sorry, I'll just say, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'll let you answer in a second, but I want someone like Chris Whitty to stand up and apologise to me and, frankly, to the nation.
Yeah, I mean, I'm completely with you. You know, I was a COVID lockdown skeptic right from the start, and you know, we're beginning now to see the collateral damage that lockdowns have done. The economy is in real trouble. We've got massive national debt. Sure, growth has picked up a bit, but largely as a result of state spending, not because the private sector is back on its feet. The Prime Minister is under pressure to raise taxes because he's worried about balancing the books. We've got massive inflation. The NHS itself has been materially damaged as a result of COVID lockdowns. We had a waiting list of 4 million before the pandemic. We've now got a waiting list of 6 million forecast to go to 8 million. We're seeing
That's the bit. That's the bit. Apart from the fact that when people get poorer, they get more unhealthy, and COVID undoubtedly in our response to COVID made us all poorer, so there's that. But also, you add on top of it, the absolutely unforgivable act of national self-harm that we've done by creating a situation, I will stand by this, creating a situation where more people will die as a result of our response to the coronavirus than from COVID itself. And yet again, here I am, just a man standing here asking for Chris Whitty to apologise to me. Do you think I'll ever get that, Ben?
Well, I think you're absolutely right to want questions answered. And the government has been very slow to come forward with its examination of its own policies. You know, not surprisingly, perhaps, because they're slightly fearful again of what the results might be. You know, what's really interesting to me about COVID, and without wishing to go over old ground, it's a virus that came out of China, but it was China that championed lockdowns as the correct response to the virus, even though the WHO, of whom so many of us are critical, the WHO was saying lockdowns is not the answer. But we all followed in lockstep behind China, this totalitarian, lying regime that exported COVID to the rest of the world. You know, why we did it is beyond me. But of course, because all of us did it, all of the Western world, pretty much with the exception of perhaps Sweden, who took a slightly more modest approach, because all of us did it, we've got no genuine independent yardstick of how COVID might have gone through the Western world had we not locked down. What I can say, however, is that developing countries, countries which didn't have the ability to lock down, didn't have the economic strength to lock down, and therefore didn't lock down, their trajectory through COVID has been very similar to ours. In fact, some countries, perhaps because they've got younger populations, have had a lower death rate, a lower death toll than the United Kingdom and other countries like us.
Just very quickly, Ben.
You know,
Sorry to interrupt. Just very quickly, Ben, just because we've got literally like 30 seconds, I want to get your take on this now. Do you think if there's ever a situation where we get told there's a big new scariant out there and they tell us to lock down, do you actually think this time that the public would do it? Because I don't.
I don't think we should be asked to lock down, and I don't think the public would lock down, and I think it's completely the wrong policy. Death is a fundamental part of life. There's a risk associated with everything we do, and we need to be enabled to judge those risks as individuals and make these decisions ourselves. It's not for the state to interfere in how we live our lives, how we conduct our businesses, how we see our families, and to micromanage to the extent that they have during these last few lockdowns, huge economic and health damages.
Ben Habib, thank you very much. Former Brexit Party MEP, indeed, as well. Man of many hats, political commentator as well. Right, time. Yes, it is time for Chat with Pat. Anyway, right, OK. Colin has been in touch. Thank you very much, Colin. Will Benedict Cumberbatch be taking a refugee? Well, he could take in a few, couldn't he, Colin? You know, he's going on about our brothers and sisters are all dying out there. It's all very well and good taking your award. Why don't you take a refugee as well? Benedict. But anyway, Gillian, thank you very much. Hi, Patrick. Well said. This would not be happening in Ukraine if Donald Trump was in power. Now, this is a comment in relation to what I was saying earlier on, which is about that kind of Hollywood wokerati, the usual types, you know, the ones who stand up. When they win an award for Best Film, they can't just go, thank you very much for the award. I'd like to thank my mum, my dad, my director, and I'm going to go and get absolutely leathered now. No, what they say is things like, gosh, isn't it awful what happened to the plight of the Native American people? Or, you know, oh, gosh, tell you what, deforestation in Norway isn't actually a pain in the backside, isn't it? And this, that, and the other. Why do they do all this stuff? And the latest one, the latest bandwagon they're jumping on is the Ukrainian flag. They're jumping on the fact that obviously what is going on in Ukraine is undeniably terrible. Do they really care about it? I'm deeply sceptical. Terry says, how about interviewing a Russian politician? Or are you only concerned with the Ukrainian point of view? Well, it is interesting, actually. I quite regularly interview a former Russian politician, although, to be fair, he has defected. So in that sense, I suppose you are right. I think as a matter of fact, was it Terry? I believe it might have been Terry. Let's have a quick gander. Yes, Terry. As a matter of fact, it is actually quite difficult to interview a Russian politician on account of the Kremlin. If you ever actually see some footage coming out of Red Square now, for example, what we are seeing, Terry, is people being arrested just for standing there talking about the Ukraine crisis. I would love to interview a Russian politician. Some would argue, what's the point in a way? Because I think you know what they're going to say. But there we go, Terry. I do take your point. Don't mind that. Barbara's been in touch. Cracking name, Barbara. Dear Patrick, there is no COVID problem, and the elite powers are worried because the fear element has lessened. And I do wonder that's where we are. I opened up this show in the same way that I'm closing it, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you everyone who's been getting in touch. GBviews at gbnews.uk. Do you care about COVID? I've stopped caring, and by the sounds of it, a lot of you have as well. Choose life, people. Don't choose lockdown. Dan Wootton is going to be joining you very, very shortly, and he's got a bumper, a box office, an absolute belter of a show lined up for you. Ladies and gentlemen, don't go anywhere. Dan Wootton is joining you right now.
Good evening. Turning a bit misty in a few places overnight. Could be some early fog patches around tomorrow, but once that's gone, for the vast majority, it's going to be a dry, fine day. A bit chilly first thing, but quite mild by the afternoon. The UK's surrounded by weather fronts, but they're not really making much in the way of rainfall. This one approaching the northwest will bring a wetter day tomorrow across western Scotland and Northern Ireland. We do have some showery rain across the northeast of Scotland this evening. That is fizzling away. One or two scattered showers over East Anglia and the southeast. But equally, they are pretty well scattered and most places are dry. But we are going to see some mist and fog patches forming across parts of the Midlands and southern England, and temperatures dropping down close to freezing, certainly in rural spots. A touch of frost to start Tuesday, but generally a fine sunny start. The mist and fog patches in the south will only take a few hours to clear away, but they could easily be there through the morning rush hour. There's that weather front coming in, bringing some rain to the Highlands, the Western Isles and more western parts of Northern Ireland. But I say ahead of it, most places dry and bright, and temperatures, look at that, across England and Wales, 13 in Manchester, 13 or 14 in Norwich, maybe 15 or 16 in London. Cooler with the rain edging into western Scotland and Northern Ireland that continues to track through the central belt and across through the Belfast area during the course of the evening. And some uncertainty about the position of that line of rain on Wednesday, joined by another weather front bringing a different day for the Midlands and eastern parts of England on Wednesday, with more cloud and some outbreaks of rain that could be heavy in places as well. For the west, it's looking like it'll turn drier and brighter, certainly a brighter day for western Scotland, Northern Ireland. Temperatures similar, whereas again across the east, that's where we'll have the highest temperatures. And if we see some sunshine poking through, we could get up to 15 or 16 degrees. A few showers across the north on Thursday, but apart from that, into the weekend, plenty of sunshine and temperatures widely in the teens.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on